all had experiences with, oh, thank you. The meeting is being recorded so that anybody who's not here is able to watch later and have the opportunity to provide feedback at a different time. Thank you. So coordinated enrollment helps to ensure that all families are supported to make informed choice about the care and education of their child through a simplified and coordinated process. Through coordinated enrollment, families access publicly funded early childhood education programs in their communities that are responsive to family needs and preferences, and that they experience full enrollment. And the key strategy is facilitated by the early learning hubs in communities and is inclusive of early childhood partners, that's you all, programs and systems in service of building aligned, family-centered, and coordinated early learning system. I think you all have that pretty down pat. So coordinated enrollment is family-centered. So really thinking about providing the opportunity for families to make informed decisions. So with an equitable and family-centered approach to coordinated enrollment embedded within a strong multi-sector state system, families can access the information that they need about programs and services in their community, find the support for navigating the eligibility, enrollment, and placement process, be assured that the unique needs of their children and families will be addressed and considered. This all seems pretty similar to our ERC, right? So falling in line with those things. Coordinated enrollment is a systems building strategy. So through coordinated enrollment, we continue to build on strategic vision outlined in Raise Up Oregon using ECE sector planning to ensure the vision is informed and shared by all of the communities and stakeholders, including families. When families' needs and preferences for early childhood education are used to inform decision-making at all levels, the early learning system moves closer to being aligned, coordinated, and family-centered. Just gonna take a drink of my coffee. So as we all know, no single early care and education program or provider can serve every single family and prepare all children for kindergarten in the current public financing and supply landscapes. So we know that our kiddos always need more, and there are always more kiddos who need services. Successfully implementing coordinated enrollment includes actively reaching out and consistently collaborating with publicly funded early childhood education programs to develop shared understanding of the processes, infrastructure, and capacity already in place that the community can leverage and build upon to support opportunities and access for all eligible families. And I think you all know none of that can really truly happen without Head Start being involved, because you all have kind of integrated yourself into communities in a myriad of different aspects, including public health and school districts in many different settings. So. All right, so how to coordinate enrollment. Oregon operationalizes coordinated enrollment with 3 areas of community work related to the enrollment process for publicly funded early care and education programs. So the first is marketing, outreach, and recruitment, right? We have to get to the families and let them know that there are services for them. And then once we find them, determining eligibility and programming, and then selection and placement. The phased implementation, so program year 21-22, that's this program year. We'll be taking these in steps, right? So there's 4 program years starting with this next one. We'll be building up to a full model. So a lot of these things are not going to be expected immediately, not for this year, but something that we're trying to work in steps to get to a fully implemented model of this process. So in this program year, there's a focus on building up local planning and local structures around recruitment, interest forms, and selection timing. Begin coordinated recruitment with partners, that's you all. Implement coordinated enrollment plan and receive TA on completing it. Begin the self-assessment and reflection process for how this is moving and how it's going. And then scale community-wide recruitment and referral efforts, work on community branding efforts, and build partnerships with CCR&Rs and preschool and baby promise enrollment. Does anybody have any questions specifically on those activities for this year? Okay. So then for next year, scaling community-wide recruitment and referral efforts still, and completing coordinated slot allocation request, create no wrong door approach with interest forms and applications, and then moved into a more sophisticated eligibility and selection models. For the following year, establish a unified eligibility and application process for all publicly funded slots and implement the full model. And then for the last year, moving into full implementation of the model and revise and refine to align with priorities for community, expand presence, and reach in communities. Anybody want to say anything regarding this slide?
Lindsay, this is Angie. I had a question. So for this next year, actually I was waiting until we got farther into the presentation to see if each of these program years and the minimum and maximum activities, are they further defined in this presentation, or would this be the right time to ask questions about, how explicit are these instructions to the hubs, and are they being directly required to engage with the OPK programs?
Next slide is key planning, but Anne, do you want to speak to that question a little bit?
Sure, yeah, I'm happy to. So for program year 21-22, I think what you'll see is we've got a focus on partnerships, on recruitment, and actually on this slide where you see the convene program partners kind of throughout with that asterisk, what we've really made clear is that program partners for this program year are inclusive of OPK Head Starts, EIECSE, preschool promise providers, and then also CCR&Rs as kind of, at a very minimum, these are the community program partners who should be engaged and continue to work with. So that's been sort of our clear communication around who's expected to be at the table for some of these plans and implementation.
Thank you.
Sure thing.
Thanks, Angie. Anybody else? Maureen?
Yeah. I see that we have a role in the plan, but was anyone from Head Start included in the development of the sector plan? I didn't see anyone's name from Head Start, and so it makes me curious because some of the timelines that are noted don't really line up with Head Start's programming. For instance, our community assessment is already done for this year, and so how would we align that with the sector plan? And just I'll have more questions, but that's just my first question.
I can speak to the for this implementation plan. I think what we're wanting to share with you all today and to hear from this dialogue is where can we move into closer and better alignment. I think what we know is anytime we try to shift a schedule or get on a programmatic schedule, that we're not gonna get it exactly right out the gate. That's part of our response process. So I think in, setting some and really being able to hear from you all about where could this be in an annual timeline and how could this come together so that everyone's, meeting requirements and also able to collaborate and work from each other. We want to hear that, but we do know that when it comes to this year, right, that we've got a ways to go in order to really align that timeline there. So thank you for that. Really appreciate that.
Lindsay, I have a question or a comment. This is Eva. Can you hear me okay? I had a little technical trouble with today. So the processes for coordinated enrollment and determining which programs best meet the needs of families, it looks to me like this is going to be kind of locally developed through partnerships in each hub region. And I would encourage some thought about having an overarching, consistent process that is more directive for each hub region, just because we have all had an array of experiences from the positive to the negative with our partnerships with our hubs, with coordinated enrollment so far, and everybody's sort of trying to figure it out. I personally feel like if there were some sort of a shared database or some kind of process that everyone had that was the same, I would personally feel a lot more comfortable, and I think programs would receive the same level of success in those partnerships.
Thank you, Eva.
Can I add on to that, Lindsay?
Yeah, Darcy, of course.
So, I've been fairly vocal, I think, about my concerns about this. I think, the beginning slides, yes, absolutely. Nothing on there do I disagree with. And I think coordinated enrollment is the ideal situation. What I'm curious about, and it really relates to what Eva just shared, is what are the accountability measures? We have to send in monthly reports to the early learning division regarding enrollment and wait lists and, all kinds of information. And it's mostly because I just don't know. Although I'm a member of the hub, I don't know what accountability measures are there in place for coordinated enrollment specifically. And I'll just add on that I have at every single hub meeting asked for what is the enrollment this year, which I know is an unusual year, broken down by income, and have become more and more concerned about the increasing percentage of children who would be Head Start eligible that are under 100% of poverty, being enrolled in Preschool Promise. And my concern is really that we'll ultimately end up not serving the maximum number of children. And while I can continue to lobby for that in the hub meetings and in, in conversations with folks, I think having people be accountable for these activities and knowing what are those markers of success would be helpful for me to feel like we can make movement on this really great goal.
Thank you so much, Darcy.
Lindsay, can I just ask Darcy a follow-up question to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, hi, Darcy.
Hi, Denise, how are you?
I was just wondering, I think that you make a good point about the income eligibility. What has been like the level of conversation about when you talk to the hub, like why there are Head Start income eligible children in Preschool Promise? And I know it is an unusual year because of who's virtual and who's in person, but is it a parent choice issue? Is it that the hub is directing them that way? Like, do you have a sense of what that's about? And I'm also interested as the, hub connector, like what's their openness to the discussion and how closely are you working together?
So Denise, I hesitate to share my experience with my hub openly. I will tell you that In the meeting, I'm given the percentage, and when I raise the concern, there is absolutely no response. There has not been a coordinated enrollment conversation since August of last year. And I will also tell you that while my program has sent over 100 families to Preschool Promise, we have received 0 referrals. So you can imagine why I'm getting more and more concerned.
Gotcha. So not a close relationship, and which is, you know, I mean, we know that's an absolutely important part of the
Yeah.
of the work together. Well, I would love to talk more about that.
Yeah, I would love to
Everyone.
too. Like I said, I don't want people to think that I don't believe in this vision. I think for people that know what's happening in our program, this is exactly what we're striving for. And to see it from a community level would be fantastic. I think everyone has to be really cognizant of, so I will tell you also what I'm given is parent choice. Like those 2 words coupled together seem to be the reason for any anomaly. And while I agree with parent choice, absolutely parents should have the choice of where their children go. I also think we have to be cognizant about what are the advantages of each program and what is each family's unique needs. And I think the folks answering the phone have to be prepared to share the advantages of all programs, not just one.
Yep. Totally agree with that.
Mhm.
Thank you very
Denise,
much for your candor.
You bet.
Denise, I wanted to follow up on that. You know, we're not there yet in our hub. We've been separately recruiting. The hub has put out a great big half-page ad in the newspaper. And what we found out, we sent our over-income kids, we sent a list over a week ago to them. And the coordinator said that she's swamped with applications from the hub. And I asked my ERC coordinator to connect with her again and say we would be more than happy to assist you in going through those applications and sending the 100% and less to us. So you know, we're trying to build the relationship. I'm meeting with Jillian this afternoon, and I think it's really organic at this point. And I like that this plan is here, but I just feel like we should have been involved. I mean, because we're going to have to step back and really revise a lot of what you did to kind of, you know, all the hard work that you did to coordinate it with how Head Start does their processes. I mean, we start early in the spring with recruitment, and I'm not sure that that's done for Preschool Promise necessarily. And so we need to think about those things. And so that's my concern. I mean, I'm just going to keep moving forward locally and try and engage my hub partners, and I think it'll work out, but I do have some concerns.
Yeah, well, and our not to make an excuse, because you've all heard it before, but the unfortunate process of the state with the funding for Preschool Promise being driven by the legislature is that it puts us constantly behind the 8 ball, which we will be there again, right? So it's whenever we can hopefully right size that into a regular funding situation. And I think that just the build out that's certainly part of the issue that we're experiencing. Thank you, Maureen, for your comments. I appreciate it. And Robert had his hand up.
Yeah, Robert.
Hey, I'll try to keep it on point. So first of all, I'm a huge supporter of what's going on in the state right now. I'm on both Early Learning Hubs boards. I'm actually the chair of one of the Early Learning Hubs in the area. I love this stuff. At the same time, I want to be clear and point out some of the things that are concerns for me. And the first one is just to, you know, come after Eva and talk about like a set of standards that everybody could work from would be very helpful. I only work with 2 early learning hubs, and like I said, I think I'm pretty involved with both of them, but they're both operating quite differently in terms of what coordinated enrollment means for them. And the two concerns I have with that are, it seems that hubs right now are very concerned to fill preschool promise slots, and they're really good at it. When they report out at our meetings or when I work with those coordinators, they're only concerned with the private providers' preschool promise slots. They don't ask me about my preschool promise slots. They don't ask us about what are our barriers to enrollment. And the language that they use is, send us your wait list so we can make sure and get them into those private providers' homes and no children are waiting. But we don't see the other side to that. It feels like the hubs are not working to help Eastern Oregon University Head Start enroll their preschool promise slots. And then the next piece of that comes back to what you guys were talking about, family choice. That's what we love, family choice, but there's a difference in quality. And at the surface level right now, the one pagers that are coming out make it seem like teacher to child ratios in the EOU Head Start program are large and the ones in private providers are small. And that's the only difference between the programs. So right now, the private provider slots are coveted in the area, where the ones that I have embedded in local schools are like well, if you can't get into the private provider, I guess you could settle for one of the other ones. And that's a great concern to me. You know, we've got the Spark ratings, we've got all that stuff as being top tier, but that's not being advertised.
Thank you so much, Robert.
I think I had someone else raise their hand.
Eva does, Lindsay.
Yeah, I just wanted to pile on with Robert. So the fact that the hubs have a responsibility to make sure preschool promises filled and successful, and that they have the responsibility for coordinated enrollment, leads to the question about whether this is a conflict of interest. Because if you look at eligibility criteria, and with some of the changes that have been made for categorical eligibility for preschool promise, you could literally qualify every single Head Start eligible child as eligible for preschool promise, 100% of them, plus those that are not eligible for Head Start. So if a hub has responsibility and pressure to fill preschool promise, and they're the ones dealing out the applicants to the programs, it's natural to think that they might lean toward filling their own responsibilities first. And I think that's a fatal flaw in this whole process, is having that dual role. Coordinated enrollment, I feel, should be completely neutral with no bias toward filling one program over another.
So can I ask a follow-up to that, Eva? This is Denise. So if considering that preschool promise is now separately contracted, you know, directly from the state and not through the hubs the way we started, would it be that, I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, what's the fix? Is it greater collaboration and partnership between the two coordinators? Is it that there's one single entity that coordinates both Head Start and the hubs? Or I'm just curious, like, how would we fix it?
I have a few different options that come to mind. One would be that the hubs do not have that responsibility to coordinate for private preschool promise providers on their plate, and they are strictly involved in coordinated enrollment. Another being that the hubs keep their role with preschool promise and another entity does coordinated enrollment. And honestly, you know, Head Start has this legacy of, we've been doing this really well for a really long time. So when preschool promise was even invented, why didn't you just ask us to do it? And many Head Starts have added preschool promise. And I think that helps them because all the applicants that come in, they can deal out themselves into their own programs. We haven't had that opportunity yet, but we're going to try to join that as well. I have a great hub and a great relationship with the hub, and we work together really, really well. But there's not enough bones around this to even know if it works. So the only way I know that we're getting a referral from the hub is if somebody calls us about a specific child. And it's kind of like we can't find anywhere to serve this child. Do you have room in your full day, full year? Oh, you don't? Okay, thanks. Or we have a child in preschool promise whose behaviors are so challenging that the provider can't handle him. Can you take him? Well, that's not coordinated enrollment. That's really just picking and choosing the kids you don't want to serve. And I don't think it's done with ill intent, but it certainly isn't helping us to fill our slots.
Just one more quick follow-up. Who, if not the hub, who would be the right entity to do coordinated enrollment?
Well, it seems like maybe in the process of reinventing the Department of Early Learning and Care, maybe you could have some sort of section of that state agency that coordinates. I mean, I think Head Start could do it, but it would be the same. We would have the same bias to fill our own slots. It wouldn't be any more neutral. So it's probably not us.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks. Thanks for indulging my questions, you guys.
Thanks, Denise. I think it's really important to have your interaction. Absolutely. So I switched slides. This is the key activities slide for OPK specifically. So I'll just give you guys a second to kind of look through this timeline, and then we can talk about any questions that you may have around this particular timeline. Your chimes. They're really nice in the All right. Did as we're looking at this, do folks have any feedback that they would like to provide? I see specifically that the sector planning participation is due by November 1st. So how we get our community assessments kind of over to the hub so that they can use those as well to inform their sector plans, I think would be important. But what else do you guys see here?
I have all kinds of questions about this page. Really about what specifically would they be looking at in our community assessment is would be of interest to me, of what their needs are around our community assessment. And then I'm most curious about the last piece of slot allocation, where the state approves, modifies, denies coordinated slot allocation requests and communicate to communities exactly how many slots and where the slots will be offered. I'd like to know more about that. I think I'm concerned because I don't have enough information to make me feel good about that. You know, we are fully enrolled, have been, but what happens if I'm unenrolled or my enrollment is less than full because the preschool promise programs were filled with eligible children from that would qualify for Head Start. If that's the hub's intention, is to fill the preschool promise slots, I worry that they should have the same requirement for Head Start, that we will, if we're going to be coordinating this, then our intention is to have 100% full enrollment for Head Start as well as preschool promise, because we are required to be fully enrolled. And I would be upset if I couldn't be fully enrolled every year. That's always our goal, and we always have made it, and we know how to recruit. And so my concern is that we are having someone that, or an entity that is not really established as a recruit, has a recruitment tool that works really well. Do you see my concern about that, Lindsay?
Yeah, I do, absolutely. And I think one of the things that's being said right now in the chat, it's hard, Darcy put in the chat, that if there's equal accountability placed on the hub for supporting Head Start enrollment as well as preschool promise enrollment, then that could feel a lot different for you all in community, right? That if they are required to be sending specific information, or that there's a level of information that's being required to communicate to parents in order to inform parent choice, maybe that could help you all feel a little more and to know what information is being shared, or possibly have some control over how your Head Start program is being represented when it comes to parent choice.
Can I speak to that real quick?
Sure, Darcy. Yeah.
So, while I actually think that our hub created this beautiful one-page layout that has the information about all of the programs, and that's great. But if you've been doing this work long enough, you know that it's really about the one-on-one conversation with a parent, and there's influence in that conversation, and even just how the information is presented. Is it great, you qualify for preschool promise, it's really awesome, it's a full day opportunity, you don't have to have home visiting. There's also Head Start, you'd qualify for them too, but you'd have to do home visiting. That conversation is not going to drive people to Head Start, and I'm not saying that that's ever happened, but I think if you don't really intimately know all of the programs, I just wonder, is it really about selling each program, or is it about selling one program and I'll send you a flyer about the other programs? You know what I mean? That relationship, that first contact is incredibly important in the information that's given, how it's presented. And so that's really my concern. Ideally what I would see is maybe, a team of people that represent all entities that are doing it together, and they're all trained on the same system. The kind of the script they use and the application process, and it is trained together to meet the needs of all the programs. Like, that would be amazing. But if you just have one funded to enroll one, which, I mean, to be fair, that's what we're doing too, but we also have a little bit more experience and are used to routing people who don't qualify for our services out to other entities, because we want everybody to be served. So I just don't want us to short play that initial conversation and the importance that relationship has.
Yeah, I think about that a lot, and I think we've talked about it in our coordinated enrollment work group about how could we possibly position Head Start programs to support hub leaders in that training and that ERC training of, because we know that an enrollment could take 45 minutes, but it also could take the whole afternoon depending on family needs, right? And so how are those things being built into our system and being supported, and how are the hubs being trained to kind of know how to move through the trauma that some families bring with them to an enrollment, that sometimes when we receive a family, we receive them and we also receive their restraining order, and we receive their, maybe their interactions with DHS. We could even possibly receive all of their substance misuse history, all in one brief meeting. We could hear all of those really challenging things. And so how are we ensuring that all of our systems are trauma informed? and that families are connected to all services that really support kind of the nuances of what's happening within the family. So I appreciate you guys bringing that up. Maureen?
Another thing that I'm curious about is under slot allocation, it says receive under OPK, receive slots through federal and state processes and serve children and families. So how do our federal slots play into this coordinated enrollment? Because it's federal to program. It doesn't come through the state and then down. So what thoughts do you have about that? Or I'm just curious. It says by January 15th. And I'm like, well, we have to fill our slots in September. We can't wait till January, unless it's a new program, like an addition to, let's say, OPK duration classrooms that we could apply for, or more early Head Start center-based slots. So what was the thoughts around that?
I can check on that a little bit. I think you're so right in pointing this out, right? There's, I think where slot allocation feels, I'll say at least to me, important in the January 15th timeline census, we do want to get to a space where we know where the vacancies are, by a time when we could actually think about recruiting in a coordinated effort, right? We know currently with Preschool Promise that we don't know slots until much later, and that makes it really hard to actually give families the information about all options available to them in a way that that isn't like fractured or like spread out over time. So I think for the purposes of that line is trying to say there are some state processes around allocating slots that need to adjust a timeline. And again, this is like as we're fully implementing, this is the goal that we're going towards, is more that communities know and are able to then plan for how and where slots are allocated in communities, so that families have that ability to see all that's available to them. So we don't have obviously the influence around the federal grantee relationship when it comes to Head Start and things. And I think more it's sort of to say, we understand that where there are state processes that can get in the way of some of those pieces about knowing and having that full information for families and community, that we want to try to adjust where that comes in. Is that helpful, or is that?
Yeah, a little bit, but I also think about if you're determining where the open slots are in January, my program, our fiscal year starts for the agency starts in July, but my federal slots start in January, although we have to be fully enrolled by, the first day of school. And so if I was to lose some of my slots in January because they weren't filled, my budget has been set since July. And to lose slots means to lay off staff, because our budget is based on personnel mostly. I mean, there's very little room for anything else other than budgeting staff and supplies. I mean, it really is tight. And so when it concerns me that I would lose slots in the middle of a funding year. Is that really the case? I mean, is that what the thought was around that? Is that you would identify all the open slots and move them to where you thought they could be filled?
I don't think I think with the slot allocation, it's trying to give information ahead of like a next year. And so not like, that they'd be done at, in January or like that, but that it would be, how do we have enough to be able to prepare for holistically thinking about all our, publicly funded slots with enough time there. So I think, not so much to say like where might, something would happen in January, I think would be the way I'd say that. Is not necessarily the intent behind that slot allocation process, but trying to align with that information about where slots will be for the next program year. Yeah. Thanks for that. It's really helpful to hear these.
Yeah. Does anybody else have anything they would like to talk about for this slide?
Yeah, this is Stephanie from KidCo. Just to kind of continue on that conversation piece that Maureen was talking about, it's kind of like when 211 asks me every so often, how many slots do you have open? I always respond back that today I may have 3 slots open. Tomorrow I may have 0 slots. It's a moving target for Head Start because we're continuously enrolling. So the only thing I wonder when you state about the open slots, say by January, and I'm assuming that this probably isn't the case, but I would assume that you guys are looking at a metric over the long span, right? That it's not any one point in time, that when you are analyzing open slots, it would be an analyzation of, okay, from start of program year, whatever program year start is, because right, we all have different ones, till now, how many slots have been left open in this program on a long-term basis? So for instance, in the feds, they look at after your 3rd, 4th month, we start to do a plan. Is that what your guys are thinking about is in terms of open slots and looking at reallocation? Is it's going to be a metric that is long-term based as opposed to any one point in time?
Yeah, I would say that, at the point of wanting to understand if a slot is open for a long time, like, that I don't think that we would be looking towards making changes about changing numbers of slots without really intensely understanding like why those spaces are open and like what is driving that and how I think it's definitely got to be a long-term look and not a by this date or given whatever those look like. I think we really want to understand from, again, the like family perspective, like where the barriers are, why aren't families enrolling, and what does that tell us about the community and the needs of the community too. So it would definitely, I think, be a long-term look at the root causes around those.
Yeah, because I also bring this perspective because I too am on my hub board and Head Start, and I bring this perspective of the community. And I do see, even within Preschool Promise, I'm fairly certain if you have this conversation with the private providers who are funded directly, right? They're not funded through the hub to provide preschool. They sign their own contracts like we do, and they also are required to meet that enrollment number, right? And so I can see their frustration because they're not in charge of their enrollment, right? So they have someone enrolling them, and yet it's their contract. And I could say that this challenge isn't just a Head Start worry, right? It's the individual private preschools that, hey, I keep seeing preschool A is getting all of their preschool slots filled, and I'm sitting here open with 2 or 3. So just that perspective of this could be a challenge for everyone, not just the Head Start as well. That would be brought to the table.
And also, I just want to tag on that as Head Start grantees, we're required to have a healthy wait list and to pull from so that we can continue to be fully enrolled. So we need to consider that as well, and probably Preschool Promise does too, that, in this coordinated effort.
Somebody's calling at me. Hi, this is Annie. I put a few things in the chat box, but I just don't see where this plan is really articulating the performance standards, the federal performance standards that, the federally funded slots are responsive to. And I don't see where there's any input or any reference to the to the Head Start standards or the expectations. I think, because we have a partnership, everybody knows in ELD that we're required to be fully enrolled at the beginning of the program year, and that our slots cannot remain open for more than 30 days. We have a constant, our enrollment department has a constant job of ensuring that every slot is filled. And it is our grant, our federal grant. And I'm just curious. So if federal slots have to be taken away because we can't fill them, then the state's going to be backfilling those slots. I mean, I just don't get the concept here in terms of the recognition around the federal standards. We've been partnering for, I can't even imagine, 30 years or more than 30 years with the state. And it just isn't reflective of that federal partnership.
Thank you, Annie. I appreciate that feedback. Absolutely. I think when we talk with our federal partners, they have some similar questions, and we're walking them through our plans as well. And we'll continue to do so as we readjust some of these things, taking everybody's feedback into consideration. So thank you for bringing that up. Do you want to, Annie, did you want to say something else?
No.
Okay, your hand just.
I do want to say one other thing, and that's that I get the parent choice, and we've been through this before. But, we get to the point where sometimes Mycena will say, and when there was a group of people, will say, well, that family's homeless. Shouldn't they be in Head Start? Our people who are placing the people at the hub level aren't even aware of what mental health services have been available in the county for decades. And, it's like, well, mental health's a state thing. I'm not being disrespectful like everybody else here. I'm on the hub governance board since the inception, and I work well with the hub. But the issue becomes in terms of, it's got to be more than parent choice. If you want outcomes, it's parent choice is a piece, but even in placement, a lot of times our EICSE providers say, we really want that child in early Head Start, or a nurse practitioner will say, we really want that child in early, we haven't even talked about early Head Start, right? And the 0 to 3 and some of those placements, but just with the pre-K, when people are saying, well, Head Start has the partnerships in place with mental health providers. Head Start has the ability to has the family workers, the ratio of family workers, where you're ensuring that the highest need families are getting the services they need. And sometimes we'll just say, please make sure that we get the homeless families or whatever, because otherwise they're not getting the services. And I just want to say that it's just family choice is not the only thing going on here. And when our ERSI department receives a call, they talk to the parent about so many parts of their life, what there's needed in terms of the length of the day, what does the child have an IFSP, what of our programs, the ELL services, we've been comprehensive for a long time. And I understand preschool promise is, and there's varying levels, but now you're talking about preschool promise in school districts. And even in one of our school districts, which they're great friends, they want every single one of the preschoolers in their program. And, we've talked about this, Donna Schnicker, we've talked about it at director meetings quite a bit. And it's like school districts, they're different, and if they're going to say, you family, by the way, have you applied for preschool? Because, we have a preschool promise program, and we expect, since you have a third grader, that you're going to be putting your kid in preschool promise. Those conversations are already taking place. And so you have to understand it's not, Oregon Pre-K ardently supported preschool promise. And then right before it began, instead of serving 100 to 200, you all know this, it was 0 to 200%. So what we supported in terms of ensuring that the families we were unable to serve were served and caring for all the families became really a wee bit of a what do we call it? A competition nightmare. And I'm just, and it's not about wanting preschool promise to be successful. It's about wanting families being in appropriate placements and who is going to be spending the time talking to the families and knowing the services available to ensure that families can be successful. Because it's not just about preschool services.
Comprehensive.
Thank you for asking.
Thanks, Annie. Darcy, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, so actually, Annie spoke to this, so I'll just gloss over a little bit of what I wanted to share. But, you know, I'm going to go back to, I think, you know, coordinated enrollment, it's in, I believe it's in statute, right? Like it's something that we have to do. It's not a choice. Is that correct? Am I understanding that right?
I think it certainly shows up in Raise Up Oregon as a kind of key system strategy. I'd have
so
to
this
check back on
happens.
the statutory. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So maybe we do have a more influence than I thought we did. I will just say, I'll reiterate what Annie said so articulately, and that is that if our parents don't hear the full breadth of services that they could be afforded and understand it as an advantage, i.e. comprehensive services and helping families get to their well child and dental providers and getting their follow-up care, helping families to get employed or get educated. Those are such important pieces in thinking about families in poverty and how we raise them up. That's what we were funded to do. And while Preschool Promise is fantastic, it's not equipped to address those comprehensive needs that our families really need. Additionally, I think we would be remiss if we didn't think about one of the great things about Head Start is our governance structure. And while I realize that hubs are required to include parents, let's be honest, in my hub, we have a couple of parents, they're very articulate, they're great at the table, but they're surrounded by about a dozen other people who have power and privilege in who they are and what their title is. And so are their voices, you know, I would love to say that they're heard as much as any one of us with that privilege, but I don't know if that's true. That's different than the policy council, who's made up of all parents and who have equal governing responsibility with the board. So there's power in that voice. And I'm pretty certain that the hubs are not equipped. It's not their fault. They're not equipped to share the comprehensive services part, the governance part. And so I don't think we can speak to parent choice necessarily unless parents are fully educated, I guess, or informed of the advantages of all programs. And so when I go back to the accountability measures, you know, what happens when, you know, how do we know that hubs are speaking about all programs and the advantages of each? I'm curious about that. How are hubs addressing the needs of our really vulnerable families, so children in foster care and homeless children? How are they making a case for Preschool Promise being the best placement for that child? And again, how I go back to that relationship, that initial relationship, and how is the information conveyed to the families so they can make a choice. And I also will say that, just as Annie said, it's also about our professional obligation to serve families in the best way possible. And if a family is homeless or a child is in foster care, I think you'd be hard pressed to not see how comprehensive services would really meet the needs of that family. And then, the other piece that we haven't talked about is children with disabilities and our mandate to serve at least 10% of children with disabilities. I don't think most of us have a problem with that, but it's almost coming to the point where our classrooms are, last year, our classrooms were 28% of our children were children with disabilities. And so, I think that's something that we have to talk about too.
Thank you, Darcy. Okay, I'm gonna take a deep breath and then move to the next slide. I don't believe that we're gonna have time for breakout rooms, but I think that the rich discussion that we have been having has gotten to the meat of what we're really looking at. So I'm gonna move to the next slide. And then, again, if you guys have anything that you would like to bring up, whether it's related to the slide or not, just raise your hand or speak up and be happy to hear your feedback. Okay. So essentially, we had that partner meeting back in December where folks were able to share a little bit of, their experience so far and so on. So these are the things that we have heard. And I think essentially it's kind of getting to what you guys are saying, that you believe very much in the vision and the mission of coordinated enrollment, and you feel like it's not quite where where you would like it to be, or where anybody would like it to be. There's a plan over a course of years to get it where we want to be, because it's a big challenge, because it's a big undertaking, and because the nuances of each individual community are so great that it's a real challenge to just implement something at this level of sophistication immediately. So I'll read these since they're kind of small. My wish for 2021, more collaborations around the enrollment experience for families and greater alignment in enrollment timelines and planning for collaborative processes. I think we've heard that from you all. Strong relationships have helped build the system, relationships between CCRNRs and providers, trusted providers and parents, and providers in the community hubs. And the last one, I'm excited to see a system where a prenatal family can log onto a website and call a number and get connected to services. One application, one point of entry, all of the services. So I think, those are things that we all can pretty much agree to, right? That if we have a family who needs services, that they can call a phone number and have someone on the other line pick up and be able to wrap around them in whatever way that they need to support their family and to support their children's education. So I really appreciate your feedback as we've talked about this, and kind of the essence of what you've all been saying. I'm going to move into these small group discussion questions here, and we can kind of just finish talking these through. We have been going through this. What I think we could spend a little bit of time on is what is exciting about the plan. If it is functioning exactly the way that you all see that it should, and you feel integrated in the plan, what is exciting, and how do you see that benefiting children and families? So I'll leave it open if anybody wants to speak up. And we have a lot of folks who have not gotten an opportunity to talk. So please feel free that if, even if what you feel like you have to say has already been mentioned, it's important for us to hear from everyone. And so if your section of the state has not been represented yet, that's be happy to hear from you.
This is Stephanie. Quick question. I was talking with someone, one of our hub staff and in another area, and they said there's a difference between coordinated enrollment and centralized enrollment. So coordinated doesn't mean that the applications all go to one person and they dole them out, but more that we're going to be systematic in kind of process and how we're communicating it, and maybe have the same application system or other things, but it doesn't mean so. Because when I read the document originally that came out, I envisioned it as now the hub is going to take all state funded applicants and dole them out to programs, and now I'm worried about I'm not going to get enough spots, and I'm not going to get enough kids, and the hub's not going to be able to do that. So, but then they were like, so I was just kind of talking about what I was thinking after I read it, and they said, listen more for coordinated versus centralized, and there's a difference there. So I don't know what exactly my question is, but helping me to try to understand where is it that we're going? Are we wanting to kind of more coordinate the process, or are we wanting like a centralized intake where all the applicants go to one person who then doles them out to different programs? And maybe we don't know the answer yet.
I'll say we may not know the answer. I think we'll also say that the answer may be very community driven and different by community. So I think that's the case, right? Like coordination does not mean, or does not have to mean centralization. I think something I'm taking away from is like, this could look like coordinated enrollment for a community is some of the things I saw in the chat around the idea of like a cross program or a team of folks who are, together working to talk with families about their options, move through enrollment as well. But I think coordinated, can also look like really a shared and trusting referral system, so that families, are connected to the services and the programs that they need and want. So it does not need to be. I don't know that we would have success if one program, one organization alone was conducting all of enrollment, right? I think it really is, and the hub role in this is really intended to be that convener of all partners to create the plan of who is best situated, and how can we all work together towards our goals that look less like one program over other and more like connecting families to the services they want and need and the programs that best offer those. So I appreciate, Stephanie, your reflection on that. I do think we're not looking for centralized enrollment so much as a coordinated enrollment that's built on partnerships and built on shared process understandings, and really intended to be responsive to what individual communities and families need.
I appreciate that you said that, because my ERC specialist is on the call, and she asked me the other day, am I going to lose my job? And I said, no, we will always be recruiting and enrolling children. But, when I sent her this, she was very fearful. And, I wanted to really be able to assure her that her role would continue. So I appreciate that you have defined that.
Thank you, Maureen. Maureen, you also put asked in the chat box if relief nurseries were included in the sector plan. And I don't know if they're included in the sector plan. They're not necessarily included in coordinated enrollment because they're not considered childcare. They're considered like preschool support services, because their days are short generally. And do you have something else to say about that?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think
Oh no, I accidentally muted you.
That's all right. No problem. Tell me you can tell me directly if I'm talking too much. I would say that I think in service of connecting families to what they, services they need, they could be used for, we may not see them we now may not see the relief nursery program writ large as one of the programs we're enrolling into, but I think they can be absolutely as like a key area of family engagement of like, how does this plan work? How might our services support, complement each other? I think you don't necessarily see them called out in the coordinated enrollment implementation plan the way that hubs, CCR&Rs, OPK Head Starts are as kind of system or program partners, but I definitely think there's probably a space in community in the planning of and talking about how this happens where relief nurseries can absolutely play a role. Not to mention that some relief nurseries have preschool promise spaces, right?
Yes.
So we know that we know that
Yes.
they will absolutely be a part of that as well. So I would say I think like the focus here is with moving into something that looks a bit more like community driven planning and implementation. As relief nurseries play a role in that, absolutely, you know, they're included as that makes sense in community.
We also, as of this last year, have Family Building Blocks as an OPK provider. So they have early Head Start now. So they'll definitely be included in that capacity, of course. See, hey, Robert from Eastern Oregon. I'm wondering if I can pick your brain to talk a little bit about how you and your hub have worked together to on your website. I was pretty impressed by your collaboration with your website and recruitment. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Maybe I need a little more clarification. We actually had some setbacks in terms of coordinating a website. And what ended up happening was that the hub built their own and we built our own, unfortunately. And then with the other hub, we were trying to at least work through the same contractor, so things kind of looked the same, but that also didn't work out. So right now we've got 3 brand new websites and none of them really talk to each other.
All right. Well, then maybe I was misunderstanding a little bit.
I wish it would have went a little bit differently, of course. But I think a lot of it was just timing. You know, our hubs were working on something and we didn't communicate really well in the beginning that we were also building something. And then, you know, we were already a couple of steps down the road and we just couldn't get back together.
I think that's valuable information too. I mean, maybe not the intent around sharing now, but you know, I think to that last question, you know, I think we know where things are barriers, and sometimes we try, and timing is a huge timing and communication are huge areas that, you know, take work. So I appreciate you sharing, even as maybe not the successful version you were hoping for.
Does anybody, I am interested to hear about the things that are going well. Does anybody have things that they feel are going really well that they would like to share?
I'm wondering if Danny's on the call right now, and we have Head Start, Early Head Start, OPK, and Healthy Families in our program, and have long wanted to do an aligned recruitment across all programs in our agency. But I think what Danny's done has been really remarkable and could be something that we could add preschool promise into the folds, as well as like train others about how we screen applicants and guide them through recruitment. Danny, I don't know if we have time even to talk about that, or if people are even interested. Maybe that's too much.
I mean, but maybe we can create the space at our OPK meeting for folks who have some of these strategies that are working well that we can share out. I know we're going to be inviting Denise to some of our meetings, and we'll also be inviting Dana, the preschool promise manager, to our OPK meetings as well. So 60% of our OPK providers are also preschool promise providers. So, Dana is like, I really should be talking to y'all a little bit more so that I can, have more connection. And so just know that we'll be broadening that attendance a little bit so that you all can be asking questions to folks as well. So thank you, Darcy. I appreciate you speaking up on that. And I know that we do have a handful of others who feel really connected to their hubs. Odie, I don't want to call you out, but I hear your name in a really positive way when we talk with the hubs and when I talk with Donalda and the work that you're doing in Marion County and so on. So, we can give a platform, I think, for that. So we can share out strategies that feel like they're working really well. We will get ready to close the meeting. We have 4 minutes left. Is there anything that folks, who haven't maybe gotten a chance to share, anything folks might want to offer up in the last minutes?
Lindsay, Stephanie has her hand up.
Oh, Stephanie, thank you.
Yes, I wanted to answer a couple of things. One, you said positives working with your hub. And I have to tell you, it kind of went back to Maureen and talking about community assessment. Our hub, now granted, our hub actually has a few in the past or currently few KidCo Head Start workers that work for them. So that makes it nice. But they have created an amazing, what we would say, I use their data book as my community assessment now. I'm a part of their data evaluation committee. It is a really great tool. So I want to say that there are definitely positives. That has been very beneficial to me. It has taken a load off of my plate and that I can use that. And it is exactly how we would do a community assessment in Head Start. Now, is it because the person who helped develop it or had major play in it was our former program planner at Head Start? Oh, probably, absolutely. But it is very beneficial to us. So that is a positive. Also, we are working on, we've established monthly meetings. We are not there. I can say some same things that like Darcy said, we continually give our kiddos that are 130% over out to them. We have never gotten a referral back to us. It's a work in progress. But what excites me also about the plan is just the vision. Again, piggybacking off of Darcy, I think all of us agree that this concept is something we all want to see happen. And it is a work in progress, and it does need a lot of work. It needs a lot of retooling, but the vision of it is something that excites me.
Thank you, Stephanie. I just really appreciate your engagement and everybody who's taken the time to read through the plan and to really speak up around your challenges and your successes and the hopes and dreams that you have for coordinated enrollment. I just am very grateful for all of the work that you do and how you know your communities. So thanks a lot. There will be more to come, and you all get to have a lovely meeting with the hub directors next week. As a side note to that, Angie says she's not able to make it to OHSA, and I think we are all doing the best we can to try and figure it out. It seems every hotel is already filled up, so we're trying to get over there. I have a lot of family stuff happening, so I may be driving over and sleeping in my van. And so depending on how I look, everybody, for that meeting, I'm just kidding. We're all working really hard to get to the OHSA meeting so that we can be there in person with you all. So please know that regardless of how it turns out. Well, thank you all so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much.
Thanks all.